And right now, we are 2 minutes away from the end of the trading day. Romaine Bostick and Alix Steel here to take you through the closing bell. It's now our global simulcast. Scarlet Fu joining us in the TV studio. Massar and Tim Stenovec in the radio booth as we welcome our audiences across all of our Bloomberg platforms here on this Wednesday afternoon to parse all the crucial moments of the day.
Yeah, I don't know about the crucial moments. Maybe a Treasury auction. I don't know. Maybe just a countdown to the inflation print on Friday. Having said that, we did see some buying into the close. Romaine, you did see the S&P, all of the major indices actually tick a little bit higher. But if you look at those numbers as you were breaking them down, and that we will break down at the close, we're seeing little changes here, Tim.
Yeah, and I think I'm wondering if the summer's just going to be like this with really quiet trading days, maybe until the end of the day when we see a little more activity. The bond market, not a snooze today. Seeing yields move higher over there.
Yeah, a pretty decent auction for a second day, for a second time in as many days. But, I think about how we've got the end of the quarter and the end of the month and the end of the week coming up this Friday. No one really wants to get ahead of that core PCE data. And if you look at the gains that we've seen this quarter and this month, pretty respectable. 4.3% gain for the S&P 500 this quarter, 4% gain for this month. You don't really need to position before it.
You know what nothing's going to do? Nothing's going to get in the way of the dollar right now until you get through all that data. I mean, highs since November for the Bloomberg Dollar Index, putting some serious pressure on the yen, and you wonder when that starts to break stuff.
Yeah, certainly the dollar elevated here on the day. We're seeing a bit of a pullback in the Treasury space, pushing yields higher, and green on the screen for the U.S. equity markets. It could have been a different story with most of the major indices opening the day in the red. Most of them are going to finish the day in the green. That includes the Dow Jones Industrial Average up about 21 points, just a fraction of a percent as we wait for those numbers to settle here. The S&P 500 up about 9 points or 0.2%. The NASDAQ Composite 87 points higher or 0.5%. But the Russell 2000, that's going to hold in the red here on the day, lower by 4 points or 0.2%.
All right, to the S&P 500 we go, guys. Certainly much more of a negative risk-off trade. If you look at the individual components, 332 names in the S&P 500 lower for the Wednesday trade. Scarlett, you've got 168 to the upside, 3 unchanged.
And because we got that last-minute lift in the major indexes, we now see 3 sectors finishing in the green. 2 of them are among the biggest, right? Consumer discretionary up a healthy 2% thanks to Tesla, Amazon, and the cruise line operators. And tech went from negative to positive in the last hour or so, gaining about 0.4%. Communications services also gaining as well. On the flip side, energy, financials, and healthcare have been weak all day long.
All right, everybody, let's get to some of the individual gainers. Amazon, did you see that? Rallying up to $2 trillion for the first time. So a record there. It's up roughly, I think, about 27% so far here in 2024. So no surprise to see it a top gainer among the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ 100. So again, up about 4% here at the close today. Got to go to FedEx. We broke down their earnings right yesterday. Number one gainer in the S&P 500, finishing pretty much at its highs today, almost 16% to the upside. The company forecast profit above Wall Street expectations, said it would buy back $2.5 billion worth of stock over the next year. So really a big lift to that one, and really kind of the signs of that sweeping reorganization and cutting of costs really taking hold. Micron, though, coming across the Bloomberg.
Yeah, adjusted revenue in the most recent quarter coming in at about $6.8 billion, relatively in line with street estimates. They were looking for about 6.7. We should point out that's about an 80% increase from the quarter about 1 year ago. Here's your bottom line number here. Adjusted operating income, $941 million. The street was looking for $869. Adjusted EPS, 62 cents a share, a big beat of about 12 cents a share there. And here's your guidance going forward. The company saying the growth, it will continue. 4Q adjusted revenue, the company guiding to $7.6 billion plus or minus $200 million. So interesting there. An adjusted EPS of about $1.08 plus or minus about 8 cents. So you see the shares moving lower here, guys, in after hours trading.
Yeah, was this just not enough for something? Alex. Like it just wasn't enough of a beat? Wow. I mean, these are really strong numbers.
Yeah, but this is a stock that had surged 67% this year, riding the coattails of AI excitement. Since the last earnings report, up 48%. So it really needed, investors really wanted to see a wow.
Is it the cash flow from operations, $2.48 billion versus $24? I mean, that's huge. But the estimate was for $3.24 billion. I don't know. I don't know whether we're splitting hairs here, but investors aren't splitting hairs. The stock's down 8% here in the aftermarket.
Yeah, adjusted operating expenses even came in below estimates at $976 million versus estimates of $1.01 billion. Again, those revenue numbers coming out, beating expectations, $6.81 billion, up 82% year over year, beating the estimate of $6.67 billion. Adjusted EPS, 62 cents. Beating estimates of 50 cents.
I do wonder, though. I mean, I'm just looking at the revenue forecast, the range that they gave of 7.4 to 7.8 billion, and the street's kind of in the middle of that range. So I don't know if this is more about just expectations were so elevated. Again, they were looking for 7.58. So if you take the lower end of that range, that could be a miss, and maybe that's causing some people concern. They're also forecasting adjusted gross margins for the fourth quarter, their fiscal fourth quarter, of 33.5 to 35.5%. Again, the lower end of that range would be below the average of street estimates of 34.5.
But check out this headline. AI demand drives 50% sequential data center revenue growth. That is truly an unbelievable number. And that's the AI demand side. That's not accounting for the actual cyclicality of things like PCs and smartphones and stuff like that.
It is a real big sea change that we've seen with Micron, because not so long ago we were talking about this glut of memory chips. Remember how everyone had bought up all these memory chips during the pandemic, then they were hoarding them and drawing down on them, and Micron was suffering from this, and then all of a sudden the AI story kicks in.
Fourth quarter adjusted gross margin, 33.5% to 35.5%. The estimate was 34.5%. So again, I can't tell whether it's widening up some of the forecasts a little bit. So, and if you're on the street, and like Scarlett, you mentioned, the stock is up more than 60% so far this year. Like, do investors say, hey, listen, I don't want any room where you might be a little bit lighter than what we've been thinking?
And we should also point out, you're also seeing some of its peers also move lower. Western Digital down about 3% here. Also, some of the bigger chip makers like Supermicro, Broadcom, basically all your AI favorites, and NVIDIA all lower in after hours trading.
You know, the company hasn't posted yet the press release to the website for any color. It hasn't been updated since last quarter. It's not yet on the terminal.
It just came out, actually.
It did just come out?
Yeah,
okay, so I better
and
keep
the first thing they say, the president and CEO, Sanjay Mehrotra, is robust AI demand and strong execution enabled Micron to drive 17% sequential revenue growth, exceeding our guidance range in fiscal third quarter. We're gaining share in high margin products like the high bandwidth memory, HBM, and our data center revenue hit a record high. So again, AI mentioned several times in this one paragraph.
Yep, excited about the expanding AI-driven opportunities ahead. They're well positioned to deliver a substantial revenue record in fiscal 2025. The stock paring the losses a bit, now down by just about 5.
I am curious, though. Like, I mean, what would you want to hear out of them on the conference call? Because, I mean, sometimes we'll see a reversal once the executives have a chance to explain themselves. But what can they say here that you think would up?
I want to know people are buying and spending. I want to know the capital expenditures by customers and clients are continuing, right? I want to know that those orders are coming in.
Yeah.
I think something also to know is what we've been getting at is just taking a look at the fourth quarter revenue earnings estimates, and so why that low end was a little bit lower maybe than expected, maybe why that forecast is so wide. Why did they have so much uncertainty with that?
Well, shares actually, they're recovering a little bit, down about 4%. They were down as much as 8% a little earlier in the after hours. Again, this is all just happening in the minutes after the trade. A lot of questions maybe will be answered on the call when it starts at 4:30, but maybe not.
And to get a sense also of whether executives are being extra cautious or, and holding back and kind of dropping a surprise during the conference call.
A surprise. Wow, it's going to be like...
It's like Bob Iger. He puts on a show, right?
Because at the end of the day, we all know that this is still going to be cyclical. We just don't know what that looks like. We don't know what the AI chip story looks like in a cyclical world. We know what the regular chip stories is. We don't know how quickly it's changing. So any sort of color on that, I would find quite interesting.
That's the thing, though, too. Every time we talk about this, I mean, everyone talks about like this is just some sort of endless addressable market, right? I mean, isn't there a point where, you've bought all the super chips out of NVIDIA, you've bought all the memory stuff from Micron or Western Digital or whoever? I mean, at some point, doesn't it tap out?
Well, the idea is that then these companies develop chips that are even more advanced that those customers then need to go buy to train their AI even more.
How much are those going to cost, though, Tim?
You got
a lot of money.
New chips.
If you have to ask Romaine, you can't afford it.
I can't afford it.
What I will say is Bloomberg Intelligence, even Citi, Bloomberg Intelligence, they were talking about, could post results above the midpoint of its guidance range. Citi, we expect the company to post results and guidance above consensus. So I think it maybe just goes back to a little bit of expectations. I mean, so I don't know.
And what?
Stock's still down about 5.5%.
Up 66% so far this year.
Yeah.
So expectations high.
Okay, sounds like there's some questions for the execs on the call, guys. All right, that is a wrap. Our cross-platform coverage, breaking down Micron earnings and the market close on this Wednesday. Radio, TV, YouTube, Bloomberg Originals. We call it Closing Bell. We'll see you again, same time, same place tomorrow.